I once knew someone who never raised their voice, but somehow every word they spoke felt like it owned the silence in the room, not through power, not through force, but through something far more unnerving, calm certainty. Their presence wasn't loud, it was precise, like they had measured every inch of the world and no longer needed it to make sense. At first, it felt magnetic. That kind of stillness makes you lean in, makes you want to earn their gaze, their approval, their warmth. But then, slowly, you start to feel the chill. Because there's a kind of person, and Carl Jung warned of them, who wears calm not as a healing, but as armor. Who learns to appear composed not because they've healed their wounds, but because they've learned to hide them beneath layers of control, image, and detachment. They smile, but it never reaches their eyes. They listen, but rarely let themselves be seen. They are masters of perception, and they've made invisibility a strategy, not to protect themselves from harm, but to hold power in every room they enter. This is the most dangerous kind of person, the one who knows how to appear whole while staying untouched, who understands emotion well enough to mirror it, but has long since stopped feeling it deeply themselves. You might mistake them for healed. You might think they're wise or enlightened, but look closer, and you'll see they are not present. They are performing stillness, calculating safety, managing risk. Jung called it the persona, the mask we wear to survive society. A mask so convincing that we eventually mistake it for who we really are. But behind that persona, the shadow grows. Unspoken needs, unseen rage, unmet grief. And when the mask becomes permanent, when it no longer comes off even in private, the soul goes quiet, not at peace, just buried. You can feel this in them. You'll share a truth and they'll nod. Not too much, not too little, just enough to keep the connection alive without ever surrendering control. You'll leave the conversation feeling exposed, and yet know almost nothing about them. They are masters of being needed without needing, wanted without wanting, present without presence, and this is why Jung warned us. The more someone relies on their mask, the more disconnected they become from their own soul, until one day, they no longer know what they feel at all. But they still know what you feel, and they know how to use it. Not always with cruel intent. Sometimes it's just survival. A deep, unconscious drive to stay above the waterline of emotion. To never drown in the chaos of feeling again. But make no mistake, when someone abandons their own inner truth, they become skilled at managing yours. And if you're not anchored in yourself, they will pull you into their gravity without ever touching you. You'll crave their validation. You'll chase their presence. You'll mistake their composure for strength, not realizing it is simply absence dressed in elegance. Because they never fight. They never fall apart. They never scream or storm out. They just withdraw, disappear into the quiet. And that silence will haunt you more than any argument ever could. You will think, maybe I was too much. Maybe if I were more gentle, more patient, more pleasing. But this is how the emotionally unavailable survive. They make you feel like the problem. And it's not always conscious, but it is dangerous, because in their need to stay untouched, they teach others that touch is weakness, that vulnerability is chaos, that real connection is a risk not worth taking. And in doing so, they don't just protect themselves, they infect others with the same fear. This is the most dangerous kind of person, not the one who explodes, but the one who cannot be moved. The one who never lets the storm come through, and so lives in a world of eternal emotional drought. You cannot water them, you cannot melt them, you cannot earn the softness they've buried under decades of strategy. And the more you try, the more you disappear. Because people like this don't take from you all at once. They drain you with silence, with the absence of warmth, with the mirror they hold up, where you only ever see yourself, trying, pleasing, proving. They are not cruel. They are not loud. They are not visibly broken. But in their stillness, something is missing. Not peace, not wholeness, not clarity, but humanity. They have traded mess for mastery, intimacy for control, emotion for image. And while they may never hurt you with their hands or their words, they will hurt you with what they withhold. And it will be the deepest kind of pain, the kind you cannot name, the kind that makes you question if you ever mattered at all. You will find yourself orbiting them, trying to make the silent space between you feel like connection, but it never does. Because people like this have learned to be the moon, always reflecting light, never generating it. You shine, they reflect. You give, they receive, but only enough to maintain the illusion of intimacy. It's not that they want to hurt you, it's that they don't know how to need you. They were never taught that needing is safe, that longing is human, that to tremble in the presence of another soul is not weakness but grace. So instead, they became still, controlled, precise. They watched others drown in longing and swore never to become that vulnerable. And they didn't. But they also stopped swimming, stopped feeling, stopped living. Carl Jung believed that what we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate. And this is how it begins. You meet someone who seems composed, mysterious, magnetic, but you don't realize that their mystery is not depth, it's distance, a protective exile from their own emotions, a well-dressed escape. You will tell yourself, they just need time. They've been hurt. If I love them gently enough, patiently enough, they'll open. But time doesn't melt masks. Time only makes them fit better. And the longer you wait, the more you lose yourself in the hope of unlocking something that was designed to remain sealed. You stop asking for what you need. You stop showing what you feel. You begin shrinking, not because they ask you to, but because their silence suggested it would be easier. And in that silence, a quiet wound forms, the kind that bleeds slowly, the kind you apologize for having, because the most dangerous kind of person isn't the one who roars, it's the one who watches you bleed and says nothing, not out of cruelty, but because they've trained themselves not to feel it. Not in you, not in themselves. They believe silence is strength. But Jung warned, repression is not resolution. And the shadow that is denied does not vanish. It waits. It waits in still eyes and unshaken voices. It waits in the cold spaces of connection that feel like something's missing, but you can't name what. It waits until it turns you into a reflection of them, unmoved, unavailable, detached. You begin to mirror what hurt you, because that's what we do when pain is not understood. We protect ourselves in the image of the one who harmed us. You start withholding too. You become careful, measured. You call it peace, but it's fear in disguise. And so the cycle continues. Two people, perfectly composed, perfectly armored, unable to reach each other, across the elegant emptiness they've mistaken for love. This is what happens when emotion becomes currency instead of connection, when vulnerability is punished instead of praised, when the heart is turned into a ledger, and only those who give nothing are considered powerful. But true strength does not fear the trembling lip, the watery eye, the voice that cracks in truth. True strength is not silence. It is the courage to speak with your whole chest, even when the world has not made it safe to do so. Because the most dangerous kind of person is not just the one who hides their wounds. It's the one who convinces you to hide yours too. Who makes you believe that needing is shameful, that softness is weakness, that longing is desperation. But this is a lie, a survival story passed down to hardened generations. A myth whispered into the ears of boys and girls too young to know that their tears were sacred. You are not here to be composed. You are not here to be admired from a distance. You are not here to become a mirror for someone else's absence. You are here to feel, to tremble, to need, to long, to love so deeply it terrifies you. And in doing so, to remember that being alive is not about being untouchable. It's about being real, messy, unfolding, seen. And when you finally meet someone who has not only unmasked themselves, but has made peace with the shadow beneath, you'll feel it. Not in their perfection, but in their presence. They will not pull you in with mystery. They will not impress you with silence. They will meet you, unguarded, unfinished, but true. And in that meeting, your soul will remember, this is what it feels like to be touched by another human being, without needing to disappear in the process. Somewhere inside you, a voice whispers, don't need too much. It was placed there by the first person who recoiled when you reached for them. Maybe it was a parent, a friend, a first love, someone who flinched when your soul tried to open. And in that moment, you learned the oldest lie, that love must be earned through silence. That being seen comes at the price of becoming small. So you learned to shrink your needs into niceness, to fold your longing into politeness, to dim your questions into quiet compliance. And now, as an adult, you mistake detachment for dignity. You walk away first to avoid the shame of being left. You pride yourself on how little you ask for. You call it independence, but beneath that mask, you are starving. And the worst part is, no one can see it, because you've become too good at hiding it. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." So many of us are trapped, not by others, but by our own unexamined protection strategies. We don't realize that we are not protecting our hearts, we are preserving our wounds. We are curating our loneliness like it's art. We are building relationships where no one is truly seen, just so we don't have to feel the ache of exposure again. And the dangerous person isn't just out there. Sometimes it's the one we've become, the one who loves from a distance. The one who never says, "I need you," even when we do. The one who gives just enough to be wanted, but not enough to be vulnerable. We are terrified of being abandoned, so we abandon ourselves first. We silence our anger. We smile over our sadness. We turn our boundaries into performance, not practice. And we wonder why love never feels safe, even in the arms of someone who's trying. It's because we're still holding our breath, waiting for the pain that never came, but always threatened to. We live like ghosts of the selves we once were, not because the world has no space for us, but because we have stopped taking up that space. And in doing so, we become the very thing we feared, unavailable, unreachable, quietly suffering in our self-made cage. You think it's strength, but it's exile. You call it peace, but it's a locked door. And every time someone gets close, you tighten the bolt just slightly, not out of cruelty, but because somewhere along the line, closeness became a threat, not a gift. You do not need to be this person, the one who is always composed, always fine, always unbothered. There is no medal for being the most undisturbed. There is no glory in being unfeeling. You are not a shrine. You are not a statue. You are a soul. And souls are meant to shake, to weep, to ache, to bloom and break and bloom again. Jung spoke of the shadow as the hidden part of ourselves we refuse to see, but he also said that within the shadow lies gold. So what if the parts of you you've hidden, the longing, the grief, the desperate desire to be held, what if those are not weaknesses to conquer? What if they are the bridge back to your humanity? What if the most dangerous person isn't the one who feels too much, but the one who refuses to feel it all? The one who lives life like a chessboard, every move calculated, every word rehearsed, every silence designed for effect. You do not have to become that person, even if the world rewarded them. Even if your wounds pushed you in that direction. Even if people once called you too much when you were soft. Let yourself return to the messy middle. Let yourself be water again. Not a fortress, not a monument, but something living, flowing, changing shape, yes, but always grounded in essence. Because presence is not about perfection. It's about being willing to be seen exactly as you are. It's about saying, "I feel this," even when your voice trembles. It's about letting the people who love you, not just your image. You do not have to disappear into control. You do not have to armor your tenderness to earn belonging. You are not here to be admired at a distance. You are here to be held up close, unfiltered, unguarded, alive. And the moment you stop performing stillness, you begin to remember what real peace feels like. Not silence, not safety, but connection. Uncurated, undone, unafraid. There's a kind of love that doesn't need permission to speak. It doesn't wait for perfect timing. It doesn't polish itself before entering the room. It simply arrives, trembling, messy, real. And if you've lived too long behind the armor, this kind of love will feel like a threat. Not because it harms you, but because it sees you. It looks beyond the mask and doesn't flinch. It reaches for the raw, unfinished parts of you and says, even this is welcome. And you won't know how to let it in at first. You'll want to run, to perform, to disappear into the role you've spent your whole life perfecting. But some part of you, the quiet, hidden part that never stopped hoping, will lean toward the warmth. Even if your hands shake, even if your chest aches, even if your eyes can't yet hold their gaze, that part of you remembers. It remembers what it felt like to be touched without being controlled, to be heard without having to convince, to be chosen without auditioning. Carl Jung taught that the path of individuation, the journey toward wholeness, is not about becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming who you were before the world told you who to be. And so the work is not about becoming stronger. It's about becoming softer, not weaker, but truer. The strength it takes to stay closed is immense, but it is the strength of survival, not of peace. The strength it takes to open after years of silence, that is sacred, and it will not come all at once. It begins slowly, in the way you tell the truth just a little sooner than you used to, in the way you allow yourself to cry and don't apologize for it, in the way you pause before reacting and choose to respond from your center instead of your defense. It begins in the mirror, when you stop fixing and start witnessing, when you look into your own eyes and say, I see you, even here, even now. And maybe that's the beginning of all healing, to become the kind of presence you always wished someone else would be for you, to turn toward your pain like a parent would, not to silence it, but to stay with it, to whisper to your younger self, the one who first learned to hide, you don't have to disappear anymore. I'm not leaving. Because you know now, the most dangerous kind of person is not the one who feels too much. It's the one who never learned how to stay. And you are learning to stay through discomfort, to stay when the silence stretches, to stay when love feels unfamiliar and fear wants to retreat. You are becoming the kind of soul who can hold it all, the longing, the shadow, the ache, the light. And in doing so, you become the safest place you've ever known. Not because you never get hurt, but because you no longer abandon yourself when it happens. This is what Jung meant when he said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not the mask, not the armor, not the image, but the you who remembers how to feel, how to stay, how to soften without shattering. And maybe, just maybe, that is the most powerful kind of person in the world. Not the one who commands the room, but the one who knows how to be with what hurts and still love. There is a moment, late at night, when the house is quiet and you're finally alone with your thoughts. No screens, no noise, just the hum of your own soul, asking softly, are you still in there? And if you've spent years building masks, years performing strength, years surviving instead of living, that question will feel like a stranger knocking at your door. You may not answer at first. You may pretend you didn't hear it. But it will return. Every night you avoid yourself. Every relationship where you disappear. Every choice you make from fear instead of truth. The question returns. Because something in you still wants to be found. Still wants to be loved. Not for who you appear to be, but for who you are. And the great paradox is this. You've spent so long trying to be seen, and yet the moment someone tries to look too closely, you flinch. You say, I'm fine. You change the subject. You laugh instead of cry. You disappear. Even while standing right in front of them. Not because you don't want love, but because you're terrified it might actually see you. Carl Jung knew the cost of self-abandonment. He knew that the people who seem most composed often carry the deepest fractures. He knew that until we are willing to turn inward, to face our fears, to walk through our shadows, we will remain strangers to ourselves. And nothing is more dangerous than a person who has forgotten how to come home to themselves. But here you are, reading these words, feeling the ache, feeling the shift. This means it's not too late. You are not too far gone. You have not hardened beyond return. Beneath the calm exterior, beneath the armor of silence, beneath the years of control, there is still a pulse. There is still a tenderness that wants to live. And you don't have to shatter the mask in one moment. You don't have to tear down every wall tonight. You can begin small, by admitting to yourself, I'm tired of performing. By letting the next person who asks, how are you, hear a little more truth in your answer. By standing in front of the mirror and seeing not just a face, but a life. A whole life. Unfinished. Beautiful. Yours. And maybe, just maybe, by sitting in silence, not to escape, but to listen. To hear the voice you silenced long ago. The one that never wanted perfection. Just presence. Just love. Just you. The most dangerous kind of person is the one who forgets this voice and never returns. But you are already returning. Each breath, each choice, each moment you decide to feel instead of flee, you are coming back to yourself. And when you finally arrive, not as a role, not as a performance, but as a soul, the people who can meet you there will feel it. Not because you shouted, not because you proved, but because you became real. And realness, true, soft, grounded presence, is the rarest thing in this world. You won't need to be loud to be unforgettable. You won't need to be seen by many to be worthy. You will know, deep in your bones, that you are not here to be chosen. You are here to be whole. And from that wholeness, love will rise, not as a need, but as a gift, unforced, unchased, unmistakably true. So take a breath, let the mask soften, and come home. You are never meant to live behind the armor. You are meant to live as you.